Hi, my loves. Welcome or welcome back to another episode of Crochet Confessional with Pussy. Get up on the floor, dancing all night long. Get up on the floor, dancing to the break of dawn. Get up on the floor, dancing to the break of Hi, my loves. Welcome or welcome back to another episode of Crochet Confessionals with Pussy. If you're new here, Crochet Confessional is a series I decided to start as a somewhat advanced crocheter, so beginner crocheters could learn from my mistakes and pick up a few tricks, insights, and experience. Today's episode is actually a question and answer session. So, in the last crochet confessional, which was the very first one, at the end of the video, I told you guys to send in whatever questions you have as a beginner crocheter, and I would love to answer them. I also put up a question tag on my Instagram about a month back and told you guys to drop your questions. So, right here, I've got 21 questions. How convenient. I've got 21 questions which we would be answering and diving into all crochet related questions. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Disclaimer, I wrote them all down here because I don't have another device I could access them on, so I'll be reading from my book. Okay? Question number 1. When and how did you start crocheting? Of course, that's the first question. I started crocheting in July 2021. So I'm not one to remember dates of anniversaries, although I love celebrating them. It's just quite hard to stick dates to memory for me. But I do remember this one because it was on my half birthdays are 6 months after your birthday, and that was coincidental. I didn't plan for it to be like that, and I remember the year because I always wish I started during the lockdown, and the lockdown was 2020, so of course I remember it was 2021. How did I start crocheting? If you watch the first episode, the 7 mistakes I made as a beginner so you don't have to make one, I gave a little bit of backstory of how I started crocheting. However, the gist is that I've been crocheting since I was 7. So in primary school here in Nigeria, it's like a girly thing. So every girl in school, back when we were in primary 4, I think, knew how to crochet. Guys even. It was like a thing to crochet in primary school. However, I found it hard to catch up because I just felt I wasn't so good with my hands, even at that tender age. But I had this cousin, she's more like a sister to me. She was staying with us back then, and she was patient and kind enough to teach me how to crochet. So I started with bags, caps, just these silly little things. We would make them and we wouldn't have enough yarn. We would unravel them, make something else. But then I got over that when I was getting into secondary school. That's high school in some regions. Picked it back up in July because my school was going on a strike, one of several strikes, and I was just so tired of being at home, being bored, not having a handwork, a business, or working jobs. I just felt like I didn't have anything I was doing to keep sane, and the COVID lockdown era did take a toll on me. So I was like, I'm not going through that again. During this strike, I would find what to do with my hands, and I came back to my love, crochet. So yeah, that's how I started and when I started crocheting. Question 2. What was the first thing you ever crocheted? I think the questions are kind of flowing into each other. So the first thing I ever crocheted was a bralette. I remember getting those yarns when I was coming home for the strike, and I was like, maybe I should start with a top. I don't even know what prompted that as the first thing I would ever make. But I remember my first crochet YouTube search. It it was how to make a crochet top, and the first video that popped up was Crystal Everdeen's YouTube. God bless her. And she did explain in detail how to make this bralette. However, I wasn't so familiar with sizing and I made it a bit oversized. So I have this friend that's quite busty. I was going to see her the next week. I gave it to her and I made another one for myself. So I made bralettes for pretty much my first 4 makes till I started making other things. I started making more advanced tops that were not bralettes. Then I started gravitating towards other things gradually. A bralette was my first thing I ever made. Question 3 says, what's your favorite thing to crochet and why? My favorite thing to crochet is quite obvious if you follow me on Instagram. I love to crochet bucket hats. And here's how it all started. I think I made my very first bucket hat. I can't remember when I made my very first bucket hat. But one thing I do remember is when I made my first Odumodu bucket hat. It was for a client that wanted to gift it to a man. And after making the first one, you guys, I never stopped making hats. To be honest, I now figured out a way to make a more ruffled one for women. And then even when I thought I had exhausted my male clients, I started making Odumodu bucket hats for women. And then Odumodu was coming to Abuja for a concert, and you guys, I had a lot of orders for that hat. So much. I couldn't keep track of how many I made even. I have to check my records if I want to tell an exact number. I also had another client order it in another color combination that was not the regular red, black, and white. And then other clients knew, oh, I can have this in another color combination. And the orders just kept coming in. And it's just my favorite thing to crochet because probably I'm so accustomed to making it. I could make 3, 4 in a day. That's of the regular double crochet bucket hat. And for more complicated granny square ones, I could make 2 in a day. If I'm being serious, I think it just comes second nature to me now. It doesn't take a lot for me to crochet it, and that's why it's my favorite thing to crochet. Question 4 now. Question 4 says, what's the most difficult crochet project I have ever made? I think if you also follow me on my Instagram, at this point, just go follow me on Instagram at Crochet by Husi. That's my main Instagram, not my tutor Instagram. So I shared a story time of the most difficult project I had made. It's a crochet dinner dress I made for a friend. You guys, when I say that project took me about 8 months to complete. And it's not just the crocheting process, it's the thinking about it, sleepless nights. How would I achieve this? So basically, yeah, this client had a picture of what she wanted made, a wedding dress actually, but she wanted a crochet version and she chose a particular stitch. It's a type of chevron stitch, and if you know how it is to make chevron stitch, you know that wasn't easy. And she just trusted me so much. She thought I could make it. I could not now fumble. And I didn't make it end of the day. But that was the most difficult project I had ever crocheted. But it was well worth it. You could check my Instagram for the story time on that. Now we're going to question 5, which says, do you prefer making clothes, accessories, or home decor? I prefer making clothes because they are more challenging than any of the other 2 options, and of course I would go to the path of most resistance. However, I think home decor and accessories are cute, like crochet keychains, crochet head warmers. They are cute things to make, but I personally don't find them as challenging as crochet outfits themselves. Yes, I prefer making clothes amongst the 3 options. Question 6 says, how do you come up with new crochet designs? I think I can make a separate video about this because I want to educate beginner crocheters on how to be more creative and pick out a style for themselves, not having to do everything verbatim, meaning like as they see it. And I would make a video on that. But for now, what I'll say, how I come up with crochet designs are, I basically use Pinterest. I let my creativity flow. I let myself sleep on it, and I just pick out things people have made. Of course, you're never inspired from scratch, basically. It could be other clothing, it could be anything. I draw inspiration from a lot of things. So anytime I'm going out, anytime I'm around creative things, I allow myself see beyond what they are, see how I myself could incorporate whatever this person has made into my own works. And I just piece all these things together to make my own project. But I promise you guys I would make a video on that. Question number 7. Have you ever had a failed project? What happened? Okay, this is a nice one because I've had a couple failed projects, and you would if you're a beginner crocheter. It's nothing to beat yourself up about. I'll share some I can remember. Off the top of my head, this cardigan rather, that I'm wearing was one of my failed projects. Failed in the sense that the client wanted a sweater with clouds, and I didn't get them correctly because the inspiration picture they sent me was exactly this, but it's a male client. I did not get that he wanted a sweater that's covered at the front, not with buttons, and then the clouds on it. I went ahead to do what was exactly in the picture, that's this cardigan with the clouds. But before I delivered it, I showed him a picture and he said this is not what he wanted. So I had to make the other one. I detached the clouds from this one and put them on the other one. Thank God I could do that on time, and the client was patient with me. Another failed project, I think this one is more recent. It happened about end of last year. So I had this client request a crochet dress. I'll pop a picture of the dress on the screen here so you could see. If you crochet, you could tell that this dress is not crochet. It's one of those mechanical, technical machine knits. I don't know if it's fabric they sew. I really need to get into how they make these type of dresses. However, I thought I could, not I thought, I can replicate the crochet make of this. But at the moment, I was working in 9 to 5, so I was serving my country, and my job at the hospital was tedious. I went every day for 5 working days, and anytime I get back and I muster up a little energy to crochet, trust me, I don't want to be thinking of how to get the pattern right. I just want to pick up my hook and crochet. But with dresses like this, you have to brainstorm. Like I said in the previous challenging outfit I've made, it's brain work. You have to actually think of how to make the dress, even for more time than you spend making the dress. And so I didn't want to be caught up in all that. I then texted this crochet artist that has made the dress. She said she has the pattern for the dress. In my mind, I thought it was an actual pattern because I've tested a couple crochet patterns for crocheters and I know how to read crochet patterns. But it turned out it was a video tutorial, one on one. She would send me clips of the process. But to be honest, she didn't really do it to my expectation. I thought if I paid that much for a pattern, she would take her time, break it down. But it all seemed like videos she had pre recorded. It wasn't, it was a mess to be honest. And I figured I couldn't make this dress within the deadline the client wants the dress. So I had to reach out to her. I told her my work situation. I had to get the pattern. The pattern is not forthcoming. And thank God she was quite understanding, and I had to make an entirely different dress. Also complicated, but Trust me, I figured that one out this time by myself, and I had to deliver on time. So that was, I won't count them as failures per se, but that's like failed crochet projects I've had recently. I have a couple more, but we'll talk about them in another confessional. Leading us to question number 8. What's your go-to yarn brand or type? I feel I have limited yarns available to me in my region where I stay. So I always use the Yeye yarn. I'll pop up a picture. It's however thin, so I use double strands mostly to get required weight of a project. And if I want the project really lightweight, I use single strand. And they also have a thicker, more worsted weight size of this yarn. I'll also pop the picture right here. I think that's what I use for this sweater. I use the Yeye Extra for this sweater. It's quite lush. It is lush, more preferable for sweaters than the double strands of Yeye. However, from last year, I started gravitating towards milk cotton yarn. So it's a China made type yarn. I'll also pop the picture, and the gravitation started because I found a blog that sold this yarn for a very considerable price, and it's good quality. So if clients are willing to pay the extra coin to get good quality, I always use milk cotton yarn for them. Not to say Yeye is not good. Yeye is my most used and go-to if I'm being honest, but I now use interchangeably between milk cotton and Yeye yarn. Question number 9. How long does it take you to complete a crochet piece? I think that's basically depending on how complicated the piece is. Like I said, for bucket hats, I could do 2-3 a day. For tops, bralettes, on a serious work day, I could start and finish. However, for 2 pieces, 2-3 days. For sweaters, a week. It just depends on how complicated the project is, how much time I spend working on the project, and a couple other factors, but that's the timeline it takes me. Question 10 says, do you crochet every day? Simple, yes. I just remember coming back from visiting my friend the other day. It was about 5-6 in the evening, and I know I couldn't get capital work done, but I just picked up my hook and I felt I literally did sigh. I felt relief. So sometimes I don't even crochet to get work done. I just crochet for the relaxing nature, the calm it brings me. So I try to crochet every day, every single day. If I'm having a full crochet work week, I crochet maybe 6 days in that week out of 7. But I basically crochet every day. Yeah. Question 11 says, what's one crochet tool you cannot live without? I'm guessing this is aside the hook and the yarn, because those are tools I have to work with to crochet. Then one other tool, a secondary tool that I cannot live without, would be stitch markers. I've been crocheting for 3 years now, and I still use stitch markers. Trust me. I'm someone that's very meticulous with counting my stitches. I'm never freehanding or just winging it. So I want to make sure I'm not missing a stitch. I want to make sure I'm increasing where I'm supposed to be increasing, not a stitch before, not a stitch after. And stitch markers help me achieve this. So I think right now that's it too I can live without. Question 12 says, do I ever get crochet burnt out, and how do I live with it? I'm actually trying to think if there was ever a time I was burnt out from crocheting. I would say yes, but that was not from the craft itself. It was probably from the particular project I was making at the time. And to escape it, I just start making another project that's way easier and mindless, like a bucket hat. But on those times I've gotten burnt out, I either just take a day to relax, or even in months where I feel I've been crocheting back to back, to avoid burnt out, I take a day to relax, watch movies, read a novel, listen to music, just dance in the bedroom, and not like think of the work side of crochet. And when I pick up the hook, I just try to remember why I love the craft, not because of the money it makes me, but just because of how much relaxing it could be to just be centered there and then, winging my hook and creating magic. We're progressing really fast, and I've answered about half the questions, so let's get to the other bits. I think they're getting more intense. Question 13 says, have you ever considered writing crochet patterns? It's literally on my vision board this year to write a couple crochet patterns, because I feel there are crochet works you make tutorials for, and there are crochet works you write patterns for. So I've made a couple outfits I realized don't need a tutorial but a pattern. However, I have still not attempted writing them. I hope to before the year runs out. One step I have taken in the direction of pattern writing is pattern testing, and I've tested about 4 or 5 patterns for different crochet artists. One thing I've realized is the last pattern I tested for Lorna. I hope I'm correctly pronouncing her name. I love the way she wrote it. I literally told her this. She made it look like a textbook. I could be in a class and be given that textbook and not have the teacher appear, not being put through by a tutor, and I would write an exam on that textbook. She made the pattern conversational. It was like I could hear her explaining it, but it was written. I really loved her method of writing pattern, and I hope when I start writing my patterns, hopefully before the year runs out, I could implement that in pattern writing. Question 14 says, what's the biggest lesson crochet has taught me? That would be patience, off the top of my head. Crochet has taught me to be more patient with others and to be patient with myself. I remember when I started, um my family members really didn't think much of it, but they were encouraging. And then when I started making big stuff, I remember this day my dad just looked at something I made and he was like, you can't even make this if you are not patient. And it then clicked on me that, oh, actually, I'm patient. While making these things, I have to be patient with myself. And I've seen it play out in other aspects of my life, in relating to people, waiting in lines. I'm like, if I can make tiny squares, 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, I could make 40, 50 of them to then make a sweater. I could sit down and do this for hours on end. I could wait for a couple seconds for it to get to my turn on the queue. It really has just made me grounded and more patient in general. That's the biggest lesson. Question 15 says, what's one misconception people have about crochet? People do think crochet is same thing as knitting, and it's not, for obvious reasons, but I guess they don't know. I'm always patient to explain this because I love to shed light on the subject. Crochet could only be done with hands and one hook, while knitting, on the other hand, could be done with the hand, but it also has a machine for it. And while crochet stitches look like the one in this sweater I'm wearing, Knitted stitches are more compact, more closed up, and if not for pattern cards that knitting machines now have, it all looks the same. Their stitching looks the same. In short, on the central knitting machine, it's only that knitting V line you could have. So that's the common misconception have. People like, what are you knitting? Would you knit this for me? I'm like, I don't knit, I crochet. Come on. Question number 16. What inspired me to turn crochet into a business? If you watch the first one, you know there was no real inspiration apart from boredom, and I could make this with my hands, so I could sell it. But consequently, moving forward, I realized there's nothing I would rather sell than my craft, and that's just it. I could sell other things, but I never came around to it. It's just the business I found myself doing, yeah, and I've accepted basically. There was no real inspiration to sell my pieces. I just started making them and selling them straight out the top of my heart. Question 17. How do I balance crochet with other responsibilities? I want to share this particular story because I know it would motivate someone out there. Is you always have the time for everything you hold important. And I know this sounds cliche, I know you've heard it a couple times, but it's basically the truth. Everybody you see has 24 hours, so it's what you do with that 24 hours that matter, and you'd only do what's important to you. So if you lay on there watching other people's life, following them on Instagram, consuming content but never creating yourself, that's what's important to you. If creating content, if learning a skill, if doing that skill is important to you, you would find time in your calendar for it. So I started crocheting when I was in 200 level in the university, and I studied human physiology. That's in the faculty of medicine. So it was tedious juggling crochet and school. But I didn't have a lot of orders at that time. I was basically just learning with whatever. Never. This is not the promise. They've taken the light. I live in Nigeria and we don't have constant electricity. And I promised myself I would not stop this video for yet another interruption. So I guess you could see me. And what's most important is the message. Also getting hot, so I pulled my crochet sweater and I was basically trying to show off with that sweater. It's not that cold. So yes, this is reality. As I was saying, I started crocheting 200 level. Juggling it with school was never easy, but there was no time. I took this huge break from crochet, and that was for good reason. Because what happens when you take breaks like that is you find it hard to kick back in. I'm saying it from experience. You just find it hard to go back to the craft. And it seemed like a lot in the moment, juggling school and crochet, the little orders I was getting, the things I was experimenting with. But when I was getting better, getting more orders, I never stopped. I just told my clients, if need be, I always explained to them that I'm in school, I might not deliver on time, so I didn't take rush orders. I would give them a timeline and I would try as much as possible looking at my calendar, my school calendar, and tell them a feasible time, and I'll try as much as possible to deliver within that time frame. Now I thought that was difficult till it came to juggling my business and my workplace when I was working at the hospital. That was a lot more stressful. But I didn't stop because I grew this tough skin from doing crochet and school. Imagine I didn't do crochet and school, I would have not been able to do crochet and work. So my advice is never take a break except you're extremely overwhelmed and you can't help it. And even then, still try to be in touch with the crafts, do things for yourself with the craft, but maybe not take clients order for a while, and then set a time when you'll be able to get back into it. Never pause or stop because you think you can't juggle crochet and school. It's doable. I did it. It's just proper time management and you'll get it right, I promise. Question 18 says, what does a typical crochet work day look like for you? That's me. A typical crochet work day would be me waking up by my regular time. I wake up by 4:30 in the morning, doing my morning routine, which takes me about an hour 30 minutes. So that will be praying, reading my Bible, studying the word, learning a language. I'm currently learning French, journaling, and then reading. I read for 30 minutes a day, so that'll be me reading whatever book I'm currently reading for 30 minutes, and then doing my household chore and bathing. This would be around 8 a.m. in the morning. After bathing, I would crochet in time blocks, so I'll crochet for 8 to 10. That's about 2 hours. Maybe edit some videos for 30 minutes just to give my hands a break. That'll be 10 to 10:30. Then crochet for an hour more. That's 11:30. And I'll have breakfast by 11:30 to 12. I'm glancing at the clock. Then I'll have maybe an hour of rest, shenanigans, because my most productive hour is the early hours of the morning. I'm already waning off by this time, but I'll try to get another work block in from 12:30 to 3:30. By then I should be pretty much done with my to-do list for the day. I would have the rest of the day to either continue crocheting or edit a video, work on my YouTube, work on my Instagram, watch a movie if I'd like, and that would be my typical crochet work day. 19, it says, if you weren't crocheting, what other creative hobby would you do? I didn't fancy myself a creative all my life till I started crocheting. So if I wasn't crocheting, things I would do are limited. Back in the time when I was in primary school, like I said, a lot of girls were crocheting at the moment. They were also making beads. I did that, but not as much as I crocheted. So I would probably be a bead maker. I'm saying that now because I see those fancy, cute bags they make and tops with beads, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could do this. So I'll probably explore that. And when I was little, I also did write. So I'm a writer. So if I wasn't crocheting, I probably would be writing, but who knows, I probably would be doing something else. But yeah, those are my other creative interests apart from crochet. Question 20 says, what's the best crochet advice I've ever received? This is solid because I have received crochet advice from one of my crochet mentors, and it wasn't really structured this way, but I'll say it this way: stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So she basically said the clients would come, the workspace would come, the workers would come. What you have to now do on your part is ensure before these things come, you're ready to take on that much clients, you're ready to manage a workspace, you're ready to deal with workers, deal with apprentices, you're ready to teach students. So just keep preparing yourself before these things come, because if you keep going at this rate that you are, it's a definite thing they would come. So yeah, she basically said stay ready so you don't have to get ready, and that's the best crochet advice I've received off the top of my head. Question number 21. That's our final question for this episode. If you could crochet for any celebrity, who would it be and why? I've crocheted for a couple influencers, and currently today, if I could crochet for any celebrity, why am I laughing? I would choose Bad Girl Riri, of course. She's an icon and I feel she bodies any look. Also, if I'm talking Nigerian celebrities, I would say Diana Ineje, mostly because she's worn crochet in the past and I like the way she wears crochet, so I'd definitely like her to wear one of my pieces, and I'd also crochet for myself because though I'm a celebrity. All questions answered. Thank you guys for sending in your questions, for the love so far on the Crochet Confessional series. Thank you for watching, commenting, liking, and subscribing. I really appreciate you guys, and all this would be meaningless without my viewers. So, thank you so much. If you liked this particular episode, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you get notified when next I post a crochet confessional. Till next confessional, my loves. Bye.